What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to touch on a couple of things involving the New York Giants, a couple of small stories. Also wanted to touch on, and the main crux of this video is going to be on the article today that came out from Ralph Vacchiano regarding your head coach, Joe Judge. According to some of his sources, I've quoted Ralph in the past, works for SNY, seems to be a pretty credible guy. He was the first guy, I always say, that initially broke the story of the New York Giants having interest in Daniel Jones a couple of nights before the draft. So we'll jump into that article and why he feels you should strongly expect the New York Giants to bring back Joe Judge. And I've kind of tried to warn you guys that I think this is more than likely what's going to happen. I'll give my full opinion on it as the video gets going. Also going to touch on a couple of other small stories, one involving Toney, who's now come down with COVID for a second time for the New York Giants. We'll jump into that as well. And we're also going to touch on Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams, of course, suffered an injury this past week. Further details came out on the injury today, and it's bad news. Sounds like Leonard Williams may, in fact, miss a lot more time than maybe you initially thought when you were watching that football game when he came back on the bench. But, of course, we're going to have to wait until we get further details. But sounds like it could potentially be a season-ending injury. First, we're going to start with the news from My Sports Update. Giants place rookie wide receiver Toney on the reserve COVID-19 list. And who knows, in terms of the specifics, whatever. It's just unfortunate. Obviously, you hope that the guy's healthy. And he was hurt to begin with. I'm not 100% sure if this means he's definitely going to miss this game. If if he's able to show that he doesn't have COVID before the game starts, maybe he'd be able to play. But of course, he's coming off the injury. And now this is the second time this year that Toney has caught COVID, which is 2 more times. Then he's scored touchdowns. Not necessarily his fault. Obviously, the fact that he's missed some time due to injuries, the fact that this offense is from the prehistoric ages, and the fact that we've had a quarterback that has not been able to put the ball in the end zone. But regardless, Toney, it sounds like, is going to miss at least another week, which, if there is one guy that you certainly want to be out there going forward, even though Mike Glennon more than likely is going to be throwing him footballs, you would like it to be Toney. He's your rookie first-round wide receiver. You want him to get more experience, even if Daniel Jones is not throwing him the football, and he's one of the few bright spots on this team in terms of bringing excitement on a week-to-week basis. So don't expect to see Toney this week against the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, the last time Toney went against the Cowboys, he had his career game. I think he had like 185 yards. Won't get that opportunity this week, or at least it doesn't look that way. Next up, we're going to talk about the news regarding Leonard Williams. This coming out from Ian Rappaport. And the New York Giants have been decimated with injuries all year. And I completely understand that you guys are sick and tired of using excuses why the New York Giants lose, and I'm not even going to use it. The Giants started 0-3. They had a relatively healthy roster when they lost those games. They lost to teams like Atlanta and Washington, so it's not necessarily an excuse, but they have been decimated with injuries this entire year. And if you think it's normal this year, and I know the New York Giants normally get a ton of injuries, look at the roster, look at the guys that have missed time. Shane Lemieux and Nick Gates, 2 of the 5 starting offensive linemen before the year started, got hurt before the year even started, or Gates got hurt, I think, week 1. Andrew Thomas has missed a quarter of the season. He missed 4 games, and he's still probably trying to get back into his playing shape. I think he started the first 4 games, and then he got hurt midway through that 5th game, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, he has not been the same player since he's come back. He's starting to get back in the groove, though, but he's missed time, and that's just on the offensive line. Then you got Daniel Jones, who looks like there's a good possibility he could be out for the year, and of course, we hope that injury's not any more serious. I'm going to wait till I get further details on that. Saquon Barkley, I think, has missed 3 or 4 games. Kenny Galladay's missed 3 or 4 games. Toney's missed 3 or 4 games. John Ross has missed, I think, 2 games. Evan Ingram, I think, missed 2 games. And then on the defense, Blake Martinez out for the year. Adoree Jackson's missed time. Jabril Peppers out for the year. And now Leonard Williams. This coming out from Ian Rappaport. Giants defensive end Leonard Williams suffered an elbow injury on Sunday that is feared to be significant, sources say. He's having tests done, but he's going to miss time. And given how late it is in the season, there is a chance he doesn't return. And my answer to you is, my thought process here is, I probably don't want him coming back unless he's completely 100%, because at this point, what do we have to play for? Of course, if he could play, I want him to play, but I don't want him to, risk further damaging that injury. There's no reason to put him out there. We're not going to the playoffs this year, so rest up for next year, and hopefully you're good to go. But this is just another circumstance of another big-time New York Giant going down. Leonard Williams is the highest-paid player on this football team. He's a guy that we depend on the defense, and we will not have him going forward, at least for the Cowboys game, and at least sounds like it's a realistic possibility. Won't have him for the final 4 games of this season. I know a lot of you guys have already checked out, and you probably are like, who cares? but still going to talk about it, and obviously not great news on the injury front. This then coming out from Ralph Vacchiano. This was from Giants Videos, certified source on Twitter, and then we're going to jump into the actual article. But this was the thumbnail on Twitter. As you can see, Joe Judge's job appears to be safe for next season, and up top it says one NFL source told Ralph Vacchiano, John Mara loves Joe Judge. He thinks he's found his Bill Belichick or Bill Parcells, and there's just no way he gives up on another coach this soon. So if that's true, doesn't sound like you should expect as New York Giants fans that the Giants are going to move on from Joe Judge. I've come out and said that I think the New York Giants at this point probably should move on from Joe Judge. I made a video kind of talking about both sides of it. I can understand the New York Giants mindset in not moving on from Joe Judge due to the fact that they've had a quick trigger finger with their two previous head coaches. They brought this guy in and viewed him as a potential long-term answer. But at the same time, I also talked about how I think it's going to hurt the potential candidates that you could bring in as a general manager. And at this point in time, I think that is the most important aspect of this football team. I want to be able to get the best decision maker possible. And if you bring back Joe Judge, you certainly hurt some of your hiring candidates. Now, the devil's advocate to that, people could say, well, a lot of those really good hiring candidates may not want this job anyway, due to the circumstance that the New York Giants are currently in. But you don't know that if you still keep Joe Judge on the roster. But at least according to Vacchiano, and like I said, Rappaport 2 weeks ago, expect Joe Judge to be back with the New York Giants. Then the question becomes, how are they going to fit a GM around him? What route are they going to take? This then coming out from Ralph. A few weeks ago, I would have told you there's no chance he gets fired, said one NFL source. Now, even after the Giants' 37-21 loss to the Chargers Sunday, I'd probably still say no chance. Mara loves Judge. He thinks he's found his Bill Belichick or Bill Parcells, and there's just no way he gives up on another coach this soon. Ownership hasn't spoken to the media at large since back in August when Mara made it clear he thought these Giants had the makings of a playoff team, even as he refused to issue a playoff mandate. In his one interview since, Mara told the New York Post he still has had as much belief in Judge as ever, and he indicated he blamed the team's struggles on injuries. So that's kind of setting it up for that to be the reason. And I kind of came in last year when they brought back Dave Gettleman. I kind of went into that season. I had a theory, and who knows if it's true or not, but I always thought that the only reason they brought Gettleman back in the first place, because they had every excuse to move on from him after 2019 when they were moving on from Pat Shurmur, was to potentially use Dave Gettleman as the fall guy. And in my opinion, that is what they'd be doing here, and they probably always view Joe Judge as the long-term answer if they go, in fact, do what is being said in this article, and they wanted to give him a little bit more time to work with this team as he was starting to build it up. That's just my guess. This then further coming out in the article. Judge declined to comment Monday on his hypothetical future, but in a conference call with the media from Los Angeles before boarding the team charter flight home, Judge sure sounded like a coach who believes his job is safe. In the immediate aftermath of the loss in LA that dropped the team to 4-9, he spoke about the big picture and the team's long-term plans. Then on Monday morning, he went even further, making a strong case that his work with the Giants has only begun. Now, the one thing I will say about this, and one of my subscribers or one of my Twitter followers actually brought this up to me, I thought it was a good point. He basically said, what is he supposed to say? That's basically, at this point in time, all Joe Judge has got. What is he going to sell, right? At this point, he's kind of like a salesman. What is he going to sell John Mara on? You're not going to be able to sell John Mara on the present. So he may be using this as an opportunity to try to speak to the media, to try to speak through John Mara and say, listen, remember the plan. It was always about long-term. I'm still trying to build something long-term. I'm not saying that he should have much of a leg to stand on based on the way that this team has played this year. And maybe Joe Judge could mature into a really good head coach. And if the Giants keep him, that's certainly what I'm going to hope. But if you ask me right now, do I think he's worth holding on to affect the potential GM we could bring in? My honest opinion would be no. This then further coming out in the article. I've said this from the beginning. I'm not interested in having some kind of quick flash, Judge said. I'm not interested in shortcuts. I'm not interested in quick fixes. I want to do this thing the right way. When I took this job, I made it very, very, very clear that I was only going to do it if we're all committed to doing this the right way, which I love to hear. I love to hear it when he said it when he initially took the job, because I'm all about a long-term vision. Make no mistake about it. That's always been what I've said on this channel. I want this team to do it the right way. I'm not a guy about taking shortcuts. I'm willing to be patient if I feel like it's going in the right direction, as I've displayed as patient as I was with Dave Gettleman, probably even more so than I should have been. And I'm definitely going to be patient with the new GM that comes in. But at the end of the day, it goes back to now you have to find a GM that fits with Joe Judge. And that's something that's been very clear from ownership on down. Joe Judge talking about the patience and long-term aspect. Judge wouldn't say if he's spoken to Mara or Tisch about his future, but one source said who had spoken to Mara in recent weeks said the co-owner continues to praise Judge and seems to believe he's the right coach to turn the program around. The source added that Mara believes Judge has brought some much-needed changes in the organization, both cultural and structural. And I know a lot of Giants fans are sick and tired of hearing the word cultural. The Giants have talked about now for the last 3 years that they have to improve the culture, and maybe they have, but the improved culture is not translated to wins, which at the end of the day is what fans care about more than anything. The source said after 4 years of chaos following the departure of Tom Coughlin. So basically, according to the source, Mara is impressed with the organization skills of Judge and the fact that the culture's improving. And then finally, Judge detailed some of those changes on Monday, saying as part of this rebuilding project, he had to teach players how to practice. Something he said took a lot longer than I thought, to be honest with you. Bring the right guys into the building to change the culture and make changes to internal details such as the nutrition program for the players. He insisted those things all had to come first before winning would start. It's a production business. We understand that, he said. But before you start getting all the results that everyone could see, you've got to get everything behind the scenes right. I'll tell you what, man. Joe Judge certainly talks a big game, and he is certainly taking the right approach. Like, if I was Joe Judge, I would take a very similar approach, if I'm being completely honest. If you put Joe Judge's hat on, what else does he have? He knew when he took this job, it was going to be an uphill battle. It wasn't just going to work like that, and he has consistently said since he took the job that it's going to be a slow and steady trend upwards. And last year, there was certainly some hope when the New York Giants ended up finishing strong last year. I think after they started 1-7, they finished 6-10. You could certainly point to why maybe they won some of those games due to injuries for the opposition. But regardless, it brought us some hope going into year 2. This year, however, it's been a complete disaster. Now, like Vacchiano said in the article, some people may certainly point to the fact, and I think it's at least somewhat fair, there have been a ton of injuries on this team. I mean, at the end of the day, how could you really judge, no pun intended, Judge going forward for the last 4 games with the players that he has out? You're missing your starting quarterback. You're missing Leonard Williams. You're literally missing your entire team. So I think at this point in time, Mara should already have his mind made up whether or not he's going to keep him or whether or not he won't. I've said if I was Mara, I would not, and I've given my reasoning, and I think it's sound reasoning. I think it's fair reasoning. However, as a fan, am I going to flip out if the New York Giants do not fire Joe Judge? I will not. I will understand the reasoning for keeping Judge, even though it may not be my choice. Gettleman, I think, is absolutely done. And if they brought Gettleman back, that is something I would flip out about. I've talked about the reasoning as to why I could see the New York Giants bringing back Joe Judge, but my biggest fear as a fan, if they do that, is does it limit the hiring candidates, and do you not get the right guy in here that can finally build this roster the right way? After all, I thought they put a mandate on Dave Gettleman when he took the job. I really believe that in my heart, that they didn't allow him to do the rebuild when he should have in 2018. And even if that was not the case, I don't think Gettleman would have been hired if he was not willing to go forward with Eli Manning. And that's just my honest opinion after Mara saw how the fan base reacted after Eli Manning was benched. We'll never know the real answer to that because Mara will never admit to that because he would be villainized by the entire fan base. But my take right now going forward, man, I would lean towards what I've said. But if they stick with Judge, you got to hope they bring in a guy that could work with him and they could build something long-term. Nobody wants long-term stability more than me. I want it to work out. I just fear that it won't. We'll see how it all works out this offseason, but at least according to Vacchiano, and like I said, Rappaport 2 weeks ago, expect to see Joe Judge back. Who will partner with him? I would imagine it would be some of the guys that I mentioned in that GM video, especially due to the fact that Rappaport came out and said it would either have Patriot ties or somebody from within the building. I talked about Ziegler. I could certainly see him being a candidate, being that he's kind of the right-hand man to Belichick right now in New England. It was a guy that a lot of people thought could get the Bronco job last year. O'Brien, who's currently on the New York Giants staff, who's a former Patriot, and potentially a guy like Scott Pioli. We'll see what they decide to do in the offseason, but right now, if you ask me, like I've said for the last month, I expect Judge to be back with Big Blue in 2022. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.